You probably know that Tupac is considered the greatest rapper of all time, but did you know that he may have unknowingly contributed to his own death? Tupac lived a life that has been widely studied in psychology, a child growing up in an environment full of problems. His life was filled with difficult moments and strange situations, but how did he achieve so much success? And what exactly led him to his tragic fate? Can psychology explain this kind of situation? You are watching The Dark Side of the Stars, and today, we are going to explore the dark side of a star named Tupac Shakur. Tupac Amaru Shakur was born on June 16, 1971, in East Harlem, New York. Many people think his name is a stage name, but it's not. His mother named him after an Incan emperor who was a leader and symbol of resistance. Tupac grew up hearing stories about this emperor and how nothing could shake him, no matter the situation. His mantra was, "There is no history without struggle." And indeed, his life was a great struggle. Right from childhood, things were rough. Tupac was very poor, faced many hardships, and his mother was addicted to crack cocaine. His mother, Afeni Shakur, was a member of the Black Panther Party. Because of her addiction, she had several short-lived relationships, and as a result, she didn't know who Tupac's father was. She had an idea, but in doubt, she told Tupac that his father had died. Tupac was born just 1 month after his mother was acquitted of over 150 charges of conspiracy against the U.S. government. His family's criminal record was extensive. His godfather, Geronimo Pratt, a military veteran and key member of the Black Panther Party, was convicted of the murder and assault of a teacher during a robbery in 1968. His stepfather, Mutulu, was on the FBI's 10 most wanted list for 4 years, starting in 1982. Mutulu was wanted in part for helping his sister, Assata Shakur, escape from a New Jersey prison where she had been incarcerated for killing a police officer in 1973. Mutulu was caught in 1986 and sentenced for the robbery of an armored truck in which 2 officers and a guard were killed. Tupac grew up in the middle of this chaos, hearing these stories and living among them. By the age of 12, Tupac Shakur was already attracting attention in theater classes. He also studied ballet, jazz, and poetry. Tupac was an avid reader. He loved Niccolò Machiavelli. One of the quotes that guided him was, "Two main impulses drive a man, love or fear." He read everything from encyclopedias to books on Eastern religions, Shakespeare, and various philosophies. When his mother overcame her drug addiction, Tupac saw her as a warrior. Much of their conversations revolved around literature. At school, everyone noticed Tupac's rap talent. His vocabulary was above average, thanks to his early reading habits, making it common for him to win rap battles at school. One of Tupac's most remarkable traits from childhood was his charisma. Friends, family, and teachers all said it was easy to like him. He was cheerful, funny, and inclusive, blending in with everyone. Do you know who one of Tupac's best friends was? One of his closest friends during school was Jada Pinkett Smith, the wife of Will Smith, who years later admitted she was very jealous of Tupac. Will Smith said that when he met Tupac, Jada was already very close to him. Will, seeing himself as just a simple rapper from Philadelphia, felt intimidated. Tupac was already a star, so much so that Will couldn't even bring himself to talk to him. Jada eventually distanced herself from Tupac because she was leaving the drug trade while he was diving deeper into it. He was hanging out with pimps and drug dealers, his first financial backers. By the late 1980s, Tupac wasn't even 20 yet when he formed a group called Strictly Dope. It didn't lead to much at the time, but thanks to this group, he was noticed by the owners of Digital Underground, a conceptual hip-hop group that paid tribute to Black Panther activists. Tupac joined Digital Underground in 1990 as a roadie and dancer. It was during this time that Shock G, one of the group's founders, produced Tupac's first album, and then he skyrocketed to fame. Tupac sold millions of records, but he never enjoyed a long period of peace. Do you know some of the bizarre stories Tupac was involved in? In 1995, he was arrested for sexual assault. Around the same time, he was shot, allegedly on orders from music executive Jimmy Henchman. Tupac took 5 bullets, 2 to the head, 2 to the groin, and 1 to the hand. According to Tupac, a woman he had met at a nightclub performed oral sex on him on the dance floor, and later went with him to a hotel of her own free will. He claimed it was all a setup. The victim, 19-year-old Ayanna Jackson, testified in the Supreme Court of Manhattan, stating that she had consensual sex with Tupac 4 days earlier. However, on the fateful night in the hotel room, She claimed that Tupac wanted to share her with his friends, that he and 3 others abused her like animals. She reported receiving threatening calls, living in fear, and suffering nightmares. While Tupac was glorified by his allies and fans, and she was painted as a villain. While in prison, Tupac released Me Against the World, which hit #1 on the Billboard charts and sold millions. At this time, he was incredibly famous, even dating Madonna, who broke up with him after his conviction. After nearly 11 months in prison, Tupac was released thanks to a deal with Suge Knight, the head of Death Row Records. Suge paid a $1.4 million bail, and in return, Tupac had to release 3 albums under his label. In early 1996, Tupac dropped All Eyes on Me, the first double album in rap history. It was a massive success, selling millions of copies, and is often considered the greatest rap album ever. It went 10x platinum and earned the highest certification, Diamond status. Tupac made a fortune. He bought a mansion for his mother, acted in and directed movies, and had countless projects in the works. But at the peak of his success, in 1996, Tupac was tragically murdered while leaving a boxing match with his friend Mike Tyson. Tupac was just 25 years old. To this day, he remains the best-selling rapper in history. He was even named one of the 6 immortal artists of all time, alongside Elvis Presley and John Lennon. Tupac created the Thug Life movement, which established certain ethical codes, including that there should be no senseless killings, kidnappings, or crack sales to children or community residents. This significantly reduced murder rates in some of the most violent urban areas. Given Tupac's complex life story, it's worth asking, was his death a tragic twist of fate, or did he himself contribute to it? Are we, even unconsciously, capable of seeking our own destruction? How can psychology help answer this question? Well, let's start with a fact. There are 2 things in life that we are given and have no choice over: our name and the family that raised us. We carry these 2 things for the rest of our lives, along with everything attached to them. In this, we have no say. But do we have the ability to shape our own destiny, for better or worse? The ancient Greeks believed we did not. They thought our fate, from birth to death, was controlled by the will of unseen forces, symbolized by the Moirai. In Greek mythology, the Moirai were 3 mythical sisters who, from deep within their cave, determined the destiny of both gods and men by weaving the threads of life. They were responsible for creating, weaving, and cutting the thread that represented a person's fate. During their work, the Moirai used the Wheel of Fortune, nothing more than the spinning wheel of their loom, and the thread of destiny moved between its upper and lower parts, explaining the cycles of good and bad fortune in human life. But the real question remains, are we all tied to invisible forces weaving our destinies, as the Greeks believed? Or are we free to choose our path in life, even if that means choosing our own destruction? If not for the glamour and fame surrounding Tupac Shakur's story in the music and media industries, his life and death would be no different from that of a young man living in a hostile environment, where social exclusion and a lack of educational support make it nearly impossible to break free from the circumstances he was born into. Even Tupac himself, despite all the resources he had, could not escape. Therefore, beyond the destructive forces that undeniably exist within each of us, forces we must confront. The key idea is that society must always provide 2 essential actions to help individuals break free from the chains that hold them back. The first is social inclusion from early childhood, and the second is an educational process that follows the individual until they have a profession. That is a truly desirable destiny for every human being. And in the next episode of The Dark Side of the Stars, he is the lead singer of one of the world's most famous bands, but the lessons his father taught him were far from healthy for a child. What are the mysteries behind Anthony Kiedis' childhood? How did he escape the shadows that nearly destroyed him? And how does psychology explain all? Don't miss the next episode of The Dark Side of the Stars.